And yeah, let's begin the webinar.
Let's welcome Mr. Quran.
Thanks, Vikas. Good morning, everyone. And thanks for joining in. Thanks, Vikas, for the great initiative. I think as this coffee culture has been blooming from last 21 years or 22 years, I've been seeing, though I was a tea drinker before I got into coffee. We have just put up, friends, a small presentation together. We're going to be taking you through a very nice small journey of how coffee culture or how the cafe culture in India actually started. I'm sure you must have seen it in the last 20 years, this culture evolving. And the best question, the question is now, where is it heading towards? We have seen it evolving. We have seen I can tell you, I've seen, this is the third era of the cafe culture, what we are seeing, or what we're experiencing in the last 41 years. So before I go into the present era or what the new cafe concepts are going to be, let's take a small journey through what we understand as a cafe, or what we understood as a cafe before we actually started seeing the specialty cafes coming up.
Hold your horses, Vikram. I'm going to give you an opportunity to talk to the world on how the coffee culture is. But in the meantime, I'm very, very happy to share that we have an explosion of people wanting to join in this morning. And there are already over 100 people this morning, and we are almost touching really 200 now. So that's going to be an awesome session. And I thank Vikram once again for joining in. Let me take you through what we have been doing. So there is an initiative by Kitchen Rama, which is a hashtag with us already. We say learn with Kitchen Rama. Kitchen Rama is basically here to educate the hospitality industry professionals on the latest updates, which keeps coming in the hospitality industry. The aim is to bring leading hospitality professionals on a common platform to educate fellow professionals on the latest development on the F&B space. Now, before we go any further, we have already done series of sessions of webinar, which is technically 7 approximately. We did the very first one, which was Kambiyavan, which was almost touched and attended by about 100 people, which gave us a phenomenal encouragement to bring it as a part of the series. Then we came up with another one, commercial refrigeration, where we literally crossed over 100 people as participants. And then the third one, of course, was the dishwashers, which again had a phenomenal success. In fact, the Q&A in this session went on for an hour. So an hour of presentation, an hour plus of question and answers, which really made us, think more deeper that what we should be doing, how should we take it further. And that's how the journey began. And then that's the point when we decided that we're going to make it as a series of webinars, at least twice in a month we're going to do it. And then came our ABC of gourmet popcorn, which was again an instant hit with the F&B industry, because this was absolutely new to them. And we talked about various flavors and ways of doing popcorn. But the latest and the most successful of our webinars was the Cloud Kitchen setup, where we literally had 500 registrations, and we had to do this seminar or the webinar twice, because some of the people could not attend it. And this is the time when that thing had come in Bangalore, in West Bengal. A lot of people could not join in, so they requested us to do this webinar again. So we ended up doing this webinar again. Again, we had about 400 to 500 people put together in both, and we also had a lot of recordings request where people wanted to listen to us on recording. So they requested of the recording, and which was shared with them, and we got some phenomenal reviews on our all sessions. So thus, we thought, let's convert now the meetings into webinars, because there were many questions coming in between. We really did not know how to handle it. So we converted the whole session into a webinar, and that's how it came. So at this moment, I'm going to launch a little bit of a campaign. Just respond to them quickly in next 30 seconds, just to get an idea. I'm sure the poll is in front of you now. You just have about, say, 30 seconds. I'll request you to please respond to it. If you have ever attended any of our previous webinars, just to understand, what kind of audience do we have with us this morning. Next 20 seconds to go, maybe 10 seconds now. Yeah, so I'm almost seeing that on an average, about 75 odd people have already attended our webinars in the past. So this is one of our loyal audiences which have been there. Thank you very much, guys. At this moment, I'm going to end it and share the results with you. So this has been our journey. As you see this again this morning, we have 75% of the people on the webinar who have already attended our sessions in the past with us. So very, very, very happy to see this. Thank you again for all your time. I'm sure you had better things to do in life, but you're there with us wanting to brush your skills. So thank you very much once again. I'm going to pass on the floor here on to one of my friends, Vikram Khurana, to take you through the journey of the cafe culture in India. But the word cafe has a wide range of meanings to my understanding. Coffee house is basically anything to start with, from a diner to a fancy bistro. So you could walk into, a cafe and could do or eat anything. It's basically a place where you have a good time while you're eating, you're binging, you're having coffee, you're having drinks. It does not specifically means coffee. Coffee, it basically means a good mix of food, coffee, maybe wine, maybe liqueurs. However, a lot of people prefer visiting cafes because it's a casual dining environment, and majority of the people we see is either having drinks and some food, of course. But again, majority of people I've seen, because of the amount of timings we have, a lot of people do order coffees. Now there are some different kinds of cafes which I have come across. Maybe Vikram differs with this. So the kind of cafes I have come across in my life are grab and go cafes where a person quickly walks in, picks up a coffee and walks out. It could be the likes of barista, could be the likes of Starbucks and stuff like this. Then you have restaurant cafes, which is more food and some coffee. So this is a typical place where you walk in, sit down for a meal and have a proper meal to fill up your tummies and then have coffee along with it. So basically a place to kill your time. Then we have also been seeing a lot of health-based cafe nowadays, which is basically focusing on health food and health drinks. Then of course you have corporate cafes, and then you have the old house cafes, which is basically a place which is opened up with big windows and bright painted walls where a person walks in and has some specialty coffee, typically espressos, typically black coffees. But let me caution you here, the moment you talk a cream in this coffee, they start raising their eyebrows to you, thinking that this gentleman probably does not know about coffee. That's why he's asking for a cream or a milk in his coffees. So that's how the coffee culture has been changing. And I would request Vikram to take it on from here and give us all an enlightenment on the cafe culture in country and in the world around. Yes, Vikram, all yours.
Sure, thanks, Vikas. Thank you. So, friends, as Vikas just mentioned, there are different formats of cafes. If I look into where we come from, and how many of you are aware, actually cafe culture started from Vienna, the traditional coffee houses of Vienna, which started in 1685 onwards. Now, these cafes were not supposed to be the cafes what we see now. These cafes were very, very compact, cozy, big halls, but a very, very cozy environment. I mean, what we generally in India think, one person can sit on a small couch or a sofa. There in a typical Viennese coffee houses, they'll be having 2 people seated. So 4 or 5 people sitting, intellectuals, political class, business meetings, everything happening in a typical Vienna coffee house. And what they serve? Mandatory coffee and water. So coffee and water. Again, and the food was not a really, really big seller in those days, but people that was how a coffee or a cafe concept started. If I recollect my, childhood, I saw a cafe in a form of an Indian coffee house in India. I used to have these guys having big white, attires and, white headgears and serving us South Indian filter coffee. If you remember in Delhi, I've seen, Bangalore, I've seen these 2 areas, but I think in every city, generally you have an Indian coffee house. This was a perception, and I still talk to some people, they say, oh, in our college days in Calcutta, we used to go to this Indian coffee house and still serve one of the best coffees. Now, the definition of the coffee at that time was a South Indian filter coffee, served in a white, small ceramic cup, 150 ml, with a nice South Indian food, some sandwiches, some pakoras. Apart from that, we used to also call a cafe in a 5-star hotel a coffee shop. but this coffee shop used to be a 24-hour serving pastas, buffets, breakfast, everything. And then came, the culture of Italian coffee in 95, 96, probably 90. Couple of coffees even started in 1990 in India, not known much. I still remember Cafe Mocha. Cafe Mocha was one of the first ones in India. Quickies in Chennai was one of the first ones in India to start off. I don't see Quickies anymore now. But these were the early entrants who started reformatting this whole model and, started putting a little more stress on coffee. I mean, end of the day, I'm a coffee guy. So for me, a perception about a great coffee cafe is always going to be serving a great coffee. Then we had internet cafes, and if a lot of you know, Cafe Coffee Day started with Internet Cafe in Bangalore, Brigade Road. That was the first cafe. So you go, you surf, and you get a coffee free along when you're surfing the cafe. So it's still called today. Also, if you see, it's called Internet Cafe. So they're not serving coffee. There, okay. Libraries, serving coffees, books and coffee. So coffee and cigarettes, books and coffee are great combinations, just like husband, wife. They go together. I'm sorry, I think the presentation. Vikas, I think the presentation was...
Okay, I'll take it.
Yeah. And then we had the beer cafes coming into play in India. If you remember, 10 years back, we had the first beer cafe coming in. Again, the beer cafe, there was no coffee, but there was a beer cafe. And then came the word specialty cafe. So why the specialty cafe? When we already had seen so many formats, when we already had the Italian cafes, the bistros, and the coffee shops. So why specialty came, or why the third wave coffee had to come in? I feel the strong reason was that coffee was not given its great due share or prominence in all the above formats of coffee. It was a meeting place. Yes, it was a meeting place. It was a place where you can go to dining, you can have fun. But the quality of coffee or the kinds of coffee which are evolving all over, people understood that in a cup, there has to be more value. Right? And that value probably was missing in all the above formats. So Vikas, if you can help me with the next slide, please. Yeah, so we say, from 1995, if you ask me to 2008, 2009, I'll call it the first cafe culture, the era one, where that was the entry point of the cafe cultures in India. You will see the culture of, it was actually not called the espresso culture, it was called the expresso culture, E-X-P-R-E-S-S-O. I still remember a lot of my family went and asked for an espresso coffee. And what they got from the cafe was a coffee, just a black coffee with no milk. And then they used to argue with the baristas, where is the milk? Because espresso should have a milk. And then, the barista had to educate that no, espresso is a black coffee. If you want to have a milk coffee, then you have to order a cappuccino. I'm sure all of you, probably somebody from your family or friends would have experienced that. So I still call that an espresso culture, where we were converting or we were educating our customers from what is an espresso and what is a cappuccino. Now, espresso is still a shadiwala coffee, with foam, some Nescafe, and you burn the milk. With the first sip, your tongue goes for a toss, and
a lot of sugar.
But that was espresso culture. And then the ambience of the cafes just started early. If you remember, orange color, maroon color, everything. It was a lot of zigzag. We had jukeboxes in the cafes, we had guitars in the cafes. So the idea was to pull in customers, but also need to give them a lot of entertainment along with coffee. Even the beverage and foods offerings, if you see in those areas, were primarily the most selling was cappuccino or a cafe mocha, right? And then the cold coffees were a great sellers. Indulgence, we call them, coffees with lots of cream, customers used to put ice cream, toppings of whipped cream, chocolate sauce, vermicellis, blah, blah, so smoothies. So this was not really a coffee for me. It was more like a dessert for me, but this was what was selling. This was really what was selling. That time the black coffee culture, if you have 1% or 2% of your hot coffee sales going into black coffee, was considered that your customers really are looking for a good black coffee if you are selling 4 or 5 cups of black coffee a day. And if you ask for espresso, by default the barista will still put hot water into it, thinking you might not like the taste of a 30 ml shot, so he'll dilute the drink and give it to you, so you don't come back with a complaint. This used to happen by default. This was our era one. Even if you see the pricing of cappuccino, I remember in 1999, 2000, when I started drinking a coffee, it was $12 for a takeaway, $36 for a cappuccino. Right? And that if I see back now, I used to get a 7-ounce cappuccino with the same Amul milk in Delhi, or Heritage milk in Bangalore. I used to have my same single shot, and coffee was still 450, 500 rupees kg that time. But the cost of the coffee when it started was 36 rupees. And then from 36 gradually, today it has come down to 180, it's come up to 180, 200, 250. The customer expectation also was very different to what it was now. Now, customers primarily moved into cafe because they were looking for somewhere to sit, somewhere to celebrate. Earlier, there were restaurants which used to operationalize between 12 to 3 and evening 7 to 11. So if I have to go between 3 to 7 or before 11, I need to meet someone, I have to go to the Indian coffee house. So these cafes actually became a bridge. They were the meeting points, they were the celebration points. I even remember when I opened some cafes in Punjab, I used to work for. If a boy has to see a girl, the families would actually bring them down to a cafe, which used to earlier happen in a restaurant. We used to call them for lunch or dinner, and all these meetings used to happen. So cafe became a great bridge. Yes, but the expectation of the customer also was not looking for a great coffee. Probably he was not also educated for what is a great cup of coffee can be, what he can experience. So probably if the barista says, please put a hazelnut flavor in your cappuccino or put some chocolate sauce in your cappuccino, he will like it and say, okay, this is probably a great coffee for me. So the understanding of coffee was very different in those days. Then we come about profitability. I always feel, you open a cafe, it has to be a biggest component that is profitability. Of course, I'll come, my next slides, I have something, passion is something which really drives all the entrepreneurs. But at the end of the day, if you're not profitable, you can't grow. You can't grow. So profitability was also, I won't say it was limited, but the expansions are happening very fast. And profitability was not the key factor because the idea was always to open more and more coffee shops. But one thing I'll tell you, I've seen coffee shops multiplying in a much faster pace as compared to restaurants. There's a very strong reason to that. In my last 2 slides, I've got some, revenue working for you to show you why coffee shops multiply, why you see 1 to 20 coffee shops happening quickly and not the restaurants. And there's a reason for that. And then, if you talk about the multiple formats in those days, Vikas just mentioned health cafes, these are all the cafes which came in the era 2. In era 1, we saw kiosk formats where you used to have a takeaway coffee. I still remember a lot of coffee chains got into kiosk formats to get more spaces because they didn't have enough spaces or they couldn't afford enough rentals in a lot of places, and they had to grow the numbers. High street cafes are always very popular in India, though there was always a challenge of great rents in high street cafes, but they were very popular. Neighborhood cafes started coming into the era 1, and they were actually very successful. So if you really see, the profitability was the best in the neighborhood cafes because the rentals were very controlled, and there was a very it became like a second home for a lot of people living in that community, coming down every evening. Of course, in those days, I missed out something which was called a hookah cafe. Even hookah cafes started during those days, and people used to have a coffee and hookah together. And of course, then we had the mall cafes, which were again high traffic, but all depending on the capacity of the mall to manage or, how successful the mall is. If the mall is not doing well, the cafes will never do well. So these were the basic, I would say, the 4 formats, which really came in. That time, the IT culture was not very strong. So we didn't have a lot of corporate parks. We didn't have a lot of, IT and, so these were the primary 4 formats all the cafe chains or entrepreneurs were focusing on.
So Vikram, if I understand it correct, it was basically a kind of a hangar jaunt, which people were enjoying it. And it was not just coffee, but the excitement around coffee, which was really selling in the market. Is that correct?
Absolutely correct. I still remember one of the incidents, when I was in Chandigarh and I was, handling the city, and we used to have the governor of Chandigarh coming in, Punjab, I think, coming in, and whenever he used to come in, we used to have the security protocol, and they used to ask us to vacate a certain space for him because the governor wants to come with the family and enjoy the coffee. So he also wanted to come to a cafe and understand. He used to order lot of food and 2 cups of coffee. So that was the culture what we were looking into or expecting from a cafe. But these were the customer expectations. We had
a very popular Indian coffee house in Connaught Place, which used to sell coffee lesser and more food, which was there and which was basically a hangout joint again. Absolutely.
That's right.
So here are some of the pictures which traditional cafes used to sell earlier. So if you look at it, they used to be typically comfy joints with sofas and a mix of chairs, a lot of food around. If I see the picture at the bottom left, Vikram, it looks like a barista cafe to me. Is that correct?
Yes. Well, coffee days and baristas have been the pioneers in bringing in the cafe culture into India. So we have to give them the due share for really evolving or, starting this culture. The Indians started drinking, like, I still remember my best ice cream in Delhi days was in Nurlas. I always give my due fear to Nurlas for getting the best ice cream those days.
Very true.
For my coffee, I need to give my share to Barista and Coffee Day. They're the brands who really, taught what is a coffee to, a lot of Indians.
Here comes
So one component I missed out, in era one was the food. If you really see, the food mix also was very, very, most of the cafes never used to cook their own food. They used to buy the food from a third party, from a bakery. They used to get sandwiches, they used to get puffs, they used to even get samosas, they used to get, cakes, everything, from a bakery, and they used to put it out in a refrigerator. Some of them used to micro the food, some used to put in the oven. But this is how food. So food was not really the priority. Priority was also to sell more beverages. And food sales always used to hover between 28 to 30%, 35% max. If you have a cafe in a hill station, or if you have a cafe in, a nice touristic place, your food offerings can go to 50%. Your sales will go to 50%. But coffee, beverages always used to, I would say not coffee, beverages used to always dominate the P&L. So going into the cafe culture era two, that's a time when, I would say the start of the specialty coffee started coming. And please understand, the specialty coffee era doesn't start just from the cafes. There's a lot of ecosystem which you have to build up. If you have to bring in a good cup of coffee, you have to brew a good cup of coffee, at home or at a cafe. So first the growers, India needs to have a good specialty coffee. Till the time I don't have a great basmati rice, I can't make a great biryani, So this was a time when our Indian growers also realized that, and they also learned from because internationally also the specialty coffee culture was started taking over in US, in Europe, Australia, all the countries. So India and China, if you ask me, we're almost at the same pace. Working towards the specialty coffee culture. So, we started getting, people started experimenting. We had a lot of good washed coffees coming in to start playing with the natural coffees during those days. It was, again, I would say, the first experiments happening in India on the specialty front. We had some good roastery cafes that started coming up who used to roast coffee in Delhi. Also the roasting started moving out of Bangalore. In era one, I remember all the coffee roasting used to happen in Bangalore. Era two, it started multiplying. Roasters went to Calcutta, roasters went to Delhi, roasteries started coming up in Bombay. So, we saw, but still, I would say the roastery cafes were not very popular, but at least the roasters came out, and idea was to give a little more fresh roasted coffee to the customers, as compared to what we used to get in era one. The ambience completely changed. Now we were looking for less formal cafes. We're not putting in a lot of sofas and all. We're putting, furniture which can help build up a community, which can make the cafes look a little more social. The menu offerings changed. I don't know whether the menu offerings changed because of the learnings of P&L or because of the customer expectations. I saw pizzas and pastas and burgers, everything joining in. More fresh fruit, coming into a lot of cafe chains moved into lounge cafes, if you remember. Diner cafes where they used to do good coffee, but with coffee they were eating a lot of good food, for their customers. They also wanted their customers to come in for lunch and dinner, which never used to happen in era one. People used to go for lunch and dinner, they still prefer a restaurant, but for coffee and sandwiches, evening times, early afternoons, they'll come down to a cafe. Baristas. I'm a barista. So for me, the barista is a key. It's a hand of the barista, we say, which transforms the cup of coffee, into a great cup. Or he puts his magic into the coffee. So the baristas started becoming more knowledgeable and more educated, more passionate, towards. Also, the baristas started getting more salaries. See, it's always, it's a two-way process. The salaries used to be 9,000, 10,000 rupees in the cafe. And now the baristas started getting much more, So in Europe, being a barista is the second most admired profession. So in India also, you can see good educated baristas now coming and working, in the cafes, enjoying their job. So this was we call the invasion of specialty coffee culture. A lot of alternate brewing methods like pour over, Chemex, French press, they started coming into picture. Cafes used to take pride in saying we are doing pour over. A lot of times they were not serving the best pour over, but they were at least attempting or trying to serve a good pour over to the guests, apart from what they're serving from a coffee machine. The Indian coffee growers started working on, experimenting with good coffee naturals, which I like. Personally, if you ask me, washed coffee is a great coffee for blends, but for if I have to do some good alternate brewing methods, I always prefer naturals. So on espresso, I still prefer a lot of blends between naturals and wash. But for alternate brewing, I love to go with naturals because of the strong fruitiness, the fermented flavor what I get from my naturals. So and it's a round cup. Naturals is a beautiful round cup what I get. If I'm doing it through a right brewing method. The coffee lovers also were willing to innovate new blends instead of just the regular espresso, cappuccino, and latte. That was very critical. So people, a lot of roasters started bringing in medium roasts. In era one, we only had dark or medium dark roasts. These roasts are very ideal for milk-based coffees, which India was a milk-based market. You will get nice milk chocolate, you'll get spice, you'll get nuttiness, and you will get some caramelized, touch in your cappuccino, latte, or espresso. It's primarily to do a lot with your roast because roast defines the body aroma of your coffee in a cup. But when you're talking about alternate brewing methods, probably your dark roast will not be the best. Even your medium dark roast will not be the best. So here, our expectation on a cup is completely different. Now we're not looking for anything which is a lot of caramel. We're not looking for which is a lot of, I can look into chocolate, but what I prefer enjoying in my alternate brewing is always fruitiness, acidity, nice bright acidity. And this will come with your naturals, and this will come if you have to roast it right. So this is the learning which came into, I don't say that the roasters not learned about all this in era one, but the market was not there, or there were no cafes serving this. Now the demand for these coffees started coming in, and customers started getting more educated about, how to enjoy or what to expect from a alternate brewing or a medium roast coffee. Vikas, can I request you to go to the next slide?
Sure. Oops, what happened?
Okay, I think we just missed out last two, the profitability. Okay, the profitability I'll cover in the last.
Is that
the slide? No, the slide is missing.
This we've covered. I think then you missed it. Go on, just you have the information.
Okay, so, but everyone can't see. So I just want to show them these pictures of the era 2 cafes and what the food used to be, how the baristas used to look. So is it possible to put it back, the slide, on the, for
This
everyone?
one to share.
Yeah, to everyone on the screen. I just want to see them, show them the pictures.
1 minute. I don't know. Control.
Yeah. Yes. We are.
You got it?
Before.
Yeah,
No, not this.
Yeah.
Not this. Before. That's the one. Thanks, Chris. Yes, the next slide, please. The next slide.
Next to it.
My apologies, guys. Zoom has just updated their version of webinar, so we're still getting used to it. Yes, Vikram, please go on.
The next slide, Vikas, may I request you, please?
This is the next one.
Yeah. Thanks. This is the era 2 cafes. Now see a difference here. You see the food. You see the same. I'm Coffee Day. I work for Coffee Day, so I see even they evolving completely into a new set of interiors. This is the lounge cafe. The lounge cafes had more options of food, more fresh food. So of course, as 36 rupees coffee jumps to 90 or $100, $110 but at least we were evolving. We moved to level 2. On the left side of the screen, you have Michaelis and Claude. Claude is, he works with us. Is a national champion 2010 or 11, and Michaelis is last year's World Barista Champion 2. But he's the runner-up, and he's also a winner of World Spirits. So he's a champ. So the baristas, you can see, now the baristas were really loving their jobs, and you can see earlier we were not giving a lot of due credit to our baristas in the era 1. They used to work, they used to put their whole, but they were not really, they were not coming into the front. But now in era 2, I can see the baristas really coming out in the front. The baristas also taking the roles of trainers, baristas taking roles of roasters, baristas coming into cupping of coffee, going in for Q grading programs. So all this started happening in era 2. Era 1, they were only the baristas, putting everything on the coffee, but not probably getting the due recognition what they wanted. So I request you for
next one.
Yeah, please.
So baristas technically gain the centerpiece of the cafe. Yeah.
Yes, and they should be. They should be. Absolutely. They are the heart and soul of the cafe.
They are the drivers. Yes.
They're the drivers. So then came the new age cafes, which we also used to call the third wave coffee culture. Now there's a brand called Third Wave, so please don't, they are also the specialty coffee shop, but we call this whole culture across the globe as a third wave coffee culture. So as the blue collar working culture you start fading away and making way for the generation next cafes, we call them, which will cater to the growing upper middle class in India. We had a last McKinsey report, which I read, that from 350 million upper class, we're going to be moving to 600 million upper class by 2025. That was what they had given, 2030. So the targeted audience still remains to be the youth and the working professionals who see cafes as a cool working place for themselves and to relax and socialize in the evening with their friends and family. Coffee consumption is on a rise, be it at home or outside. The upcoming cafes have to offer them exemplary beverage options, bright and lively ambience, and a strong coffee connection to retain the loyalty of the guests. So I say the loyalty of the guests because now, today, we have close to 11,000 coffee shops pan India. You see every month, more than restaurants, we see the coffee shops coming up. Now, every restaurant is also trying to serve a great cup of coffee. Hotels, which were never till late 90s looking for a great cup of coffee, except probably a couple of chains. Now everyone is trying to get into putting roasters, trying to get to serve a great cup of coffee because they're charging $200 a room night. And they don't want their guests to go to a good coffee shop nearby, a branded coffee shop. Okay. They want to retain them and give them a good coffee in the hotel. So everyone started taking coffee more seriously. There was again, it's not just about offering the entire ambience, beverage offerings, and you need to bring in a coffee connection. Now, how this coffee connection started coming in? So, Vikas, you can just go to the next slide.
Yeah. 1 minute. There you go.
Yeah, some of the pictures of the new generation coffee shops where you can see a lady on the right side. This is a hotel in Bangalore, a 5-star property, a branded hotel, who are actually roasting coffee in their lobby. A 5-star property roasting coffee in the lobby. The top is one cafe at the airport, Bangalore Airport, who are actually keeping a roaster and roasting coffee once in a day. The right side, you see a cafe in Calcutta. It was a 7-year-old cafe, and now they've become a roastery cafe. And yeah, go to the next slide, please. So I always insist, and we always used to discuss with a lot of my customers, that the future is going to be for the roastery cafes. Most of the specialty coffee shops in next 10 years would be the roastery cafes who will be roasting fresh coffee. Like we have kitchen for food, we will have roasteries doing fresh coffee roasting at the cafe level and serving them fresh. Now, it's not about just the freshness. It's about creating a great, long, big, strong connect with coffee for the customers. Now, if you really, a lot of customers think roastery, putting up a roastery cafe is very expensive. It needs a lot of knowledge, know-how. How will we manage it? Can we do it? It is happening now. On an average, India is adding close to 22 new roastery cafes. New roasters are being sold in the Indian market, which used to happen at a speed of 5 or 6 roasteries every year. There are a few brands driving it. So what we see, the new era is going to be for the micro roastery cafes. There will be a lot of technology, right? There will be a lot of technology which is going to drive the coffee and the cafes in the next era, right? And this technology is going to be used from every aspect, right from the farmer level, where he's going to be doing, creating a good coffee for you, a specialty coffee. We'll come into that. What are the kind of work the farmers are doing at their estate levels to, give a good experience or offer good coffee to their, cafes or their customers. At brewing, you need to have a great technology being used. There was an era when we only used to use a single boiler machine, but now you have new technologies coming in. Now we have roasters which start to 5 kgs. 500 gram roaster which is good enough to do a 2 kg coffee in an hour. A good coffee shop in India still does about 1.5 to 2 kgs coffee on an average. Average coffee for 11,000 coffee shops is about 1.2, 1.3 kgs on an average. Now, there are some coffee shops which do 3, some coffee shops do 4 kgs, but majority of them are in about 1.5 range. Right. So a good roaster, micro roaster, can start from 6 lakhs, but what it gives you back, an opportunity to show the entire process from a bean, or from a fruit bean to a cup in front of your customers. I still remember visiting a cafe in Hamburg about 8 years back at the Hamburg port area, They had a beautiful roaster. They were roasting coffee on one side, and they had a very nice cafe on one side where people were having a coffee, croissant, sandwiches, cold sandwiches. Because Hamburg in Germany takes a lot of cold sandwiches, and they were all watching the guy who was actually roasting the coffee at a small distance. And they, so this was for me the first a roastery cafe which I experienced, and it was really great for me. In India, I never had a chance to see a roastery cafe those days. Our roasters used to still preserve the roastery inside. It was like a secret. Where are we roasting, coffee? Which is their right, where I'm roasting my coffee, what green coffee I'm buying. It was all hidden. It was not in front of the. So in the third wave culture, the roasters are now coming in front. The people, like customers are not, the cafe owners are not, they don't want to hide what they are doing. They take a lot of pride in telling them, guys, this is what I'm doing. I'm invested in a roaster. I've learned the experience of roasting. I'm getting the finest coffees from India, and I'm roasting them in front of you. And I'm giving you an option and choice of different coffees. I'm introducing micro lots to you, and you have to decide what you want. Now, eventually, this is going to be a line between a cafe and a roastery cafe.
What could be more transparent?
That'll be more transparent. Now I see, the pride in the lady who runs this cafe in Calcutta. She used to run a cafe. She was doing a very good cafe. Cafe used to always do very well. When I used to visit, so a lot of, customers sitting in. But she still wanted to make it a roastery cafe. And she did it. And she took a lot of pride in doing so. She learned how to, roast the coffee. It takes 3 days to learn how to roast a coffee, the basics. After that, it's your practice, it's your experience. You can't become a cupper in 3 days, but you have to keep cupping. Like if you're a wine cupper, a wine taster, you need to keep tasting wines to understand what a wine is. Similarly, as a coffee cupper, you need to get indulged into it. So if you are, for us, it's a 3-day process to educate a customer on the profiling of coffee, how to run a roaster, what to expect from what, and to train them how to do some blending. After that, the whole world is yours. All the coffees. India is the 6th largest producer of green coffee, and we are one of the largest exporters of green coffee. So there's no dearth of good green coffee in India. But if you're a roaster, now you can be part of that ecosystem where you can travel. Vikas.
So do you have certified courses for people to train them to become coffee roasters?
You don't need a certificate. We have certification programs, but I always feel it's all about your learning. See, I can give you a certificate, but if he's not learned, idea is we handhold our roasters, and we always prefer that the entrepreneurs should also learn. Who are running the cafe should also be a part of it, because this is a great learning. Why you're into coffee business? It's not because of money. You're into coffee business of passion. And eventually money. Yes,
it's a great way to. Absolutely, it's a great way to engage your customers in today's time and showing your passion that, here is a coffee roaster, here are the fresh beans. We do it absolutely fresh for you. You want to buy coffee powders, you want to buy coffee beans, you want to buy coffee to drink. Everything is available with us. So come on in. Exactly. You're absolutely right, Vikram.
Yeah. So if you see my last point, it says micro roasters gives an opportunity to the cafe to be also called a coffee shopping. That's because what you just mentioned. A shop is where I just don't come for a good coffee. I come with my friends or alone when I want to have a nice coffee. I'm back from the office. I come, I have a coffee. I want to take some good coffee from my home because I also have my morning cup at 7 in the morning. I want to take some coffee from my office. There are pouches. You can take fresh coffee in the form of a pouch and brew it, a black coffee on your desk today. You can buy good merchandising from a coffee shop. If you are doing freshly roasted coffee, you can have this entire, you can engage your customers with merchandising for the right brewing, easy brewing, and you can give them a very nice, a very nice coffee packed fresh for them based on order, right? They can come and place the orders. A lot of roasters are doing. They're roasting on orders today with the online platforms. The whole India is now so close. You can just place in the order in next 48 hours or 72 hours. You have the coffee shipped to their place. So micro roasters gives you a lot of opportunity. I think the biggest opportunity it gives you is inviting your guests to get indulge into the romance of coffee.
Absolutely, totally agree with you.
If you go to the next slide, please, Vikas. Yeah. So, along with the roaster, now, as I told you, the whole world was using a single boiler machine. A single boiler machine, especially in India, where we do a lot of milk coffees. there's one machine which makes a lot of steam, which makes a lot of espresso for you. So what happens? We were never focused on the espresso temperatures. Never. No single ball in the machine in the world can do a very unique or very consistent espresso temperature if you're continuously taking a lot of steam out for milk coffees. In India, when we talk about 85% milk coffees, and that too, we take a lot of hot water for the tea, we wash the cups from the machine to preheat them. We do all these funny things, in the cafe. So the next era was multi-boiler coffee shops. I still see a lot of international chains, using multi-boiler chains. But then came the profiling machines. The profiling machines, for me, what is a coffee machine? Coffee machine is just a tool. Like you see an electrician who fits in, a nice thing, or he uses certain tools. So for a barista, I buy my best coffee. A coffee machine is a tool to brew a good cup of coffee. That's it. What does espresso machine uses? Espresso machine uses pressures, it uses temperature, and it gives all this, thing on your palm of your hand to brew a good espresso. So now, with this great coffee coming in, the specialty drive coming in, what the baristas wanted was more flexibility in these tools to play around. If I'm using a medium roast, do I really need to use 92 degree or 90 degree? Would I like to use a 96 degree water? Why not? I would like to trade more body into my medium, roast coffee by using a higher temperature. How do I do it? I do it with a multi-boiler, or I do it with a pressure profiling machine. So this machine in picture you see these levers, the wooden handles on top. These are the pressure profiling. So with your hand, you can profile the 5 most critical components if you talk about espresso, which is water temperature, each roast, each coffee, be it a single origin, be it a natural, be it a blend, has to be brewed with a different temperature to get the best profile out. Right? And I'm sure most of the baristas attending will agree with me. The coffee people will agree with me. Then is the pre-infusion. Pre-infusion is science where we bloom the coffee. Now, whether we need a 3-second pre-infusion, whether we need a 5-second pre-infusion, whether we need a pre-infusion for a certain coffee, also needs to be decided by a barista. Water flow rate. A lot of times we misunderstand water flow rate with water pressure. They're two different things. Water flow rate is at what speed we are letting water come into that 30-second cycle, or a 26-second cycle, or a 40-second cycle. And that also has to be controlled. Then we have water pressures. We use a 9-bar pressure. The Bible says 9 bars. This is what everyone has learned from last many years because of Bellismo and a lot of coffee sites. 9 bars. No, today it's no more 9 bars. We say you can even start with a high pressure and you can bring down your pressure down to 4 bars. Or you can consistently brew your coffee at about 7 or 6 bars if you want. All depends on what you are brewing, because we have so much of variety. We have fermented coffees. I'll be coming next to the kinds of coffees that are coming in. If I have to use them on my espresso, it's not easy. A lot of single origins are not easy to brew the best espresso out. So if you have to get your best shot out, a nice balanced shot out with a good flow, with a good body, you need to profile your coffee. And finally, the timing. We always used to talk about in the early days, a barista has to brew the coffee in 26 seconds, 30 seconds. None of these things exist anymore. If I'm talking about a natural, if I'm talking about medium roast, I myself, a lot of my, colleagues will see that in my lab. I think because I will brew my coffee up to 36 seconds sometimes to get the best out. If I stop it at 28 seconds, I'm missing. My balance is not there. So today, there is no thumb rule. We used to have this 5 thumb rules of espresso brewing. They don't exist anymore because of the variety of coffees, because of the roasting parameters have changed completely. So when all this, the green coffee has changed, the roasting parameters have changed, we need to have more flexibility in our machine. And we also need to have trained baristas who can also cup the coffees. See, I can brew this with my liver, which you see on the machine. I can save this. So my screen on top is showing me a graph. It shows me a graph now. That 30-second or 40-second shot comes in a form of a graph to me on this, each row. So my barista is standing and watching the graph and watching my shot. So he feels this is the right shot, he stops and he locks it for the next barista for consistency. But he also needs to cup it. He needs to understand, is this the right shot? Like a wine taster, he gets a lot of wines coming out, but he decides which is the best wine. Similarly, it's the job of the barista or the roaster to decide what is the best shot for this particular coffee, blend, single origin, whatever you're using. So I think eventually all the baristas need to be good cuppers. That's one big component in India we miss out. our baristas don't cup a lot of coffees. And I always say, since I've been judging the barista championship, I always tell my baristas, the winner is going to be the guy who's a combination of a great barista with the skills, knowledge on coffee, and great cupping skills. Without cupping skills, he can go wrong in his timing. He can go wrong in any aspect because he doesn't understand which is the best shot with this particular coffee. So, this is just what technology. Then we go to the grinders now, because we all say grinder is the heart of the machine. If my heart stops functioning in my body, I'm dead. So if my grinder is not good, I cannot brew a great coffee. All the hard work of my specialty coffee, which I source from estates, I work with the estate owners to do a special coffee for me. Today, there are estate owners who are, working with the cafes, where they dedicate a part of the estate only for them to grow a certain profile of coffee for them. Now, that's the seriousness what we're talking about today. So if all this hard work goes for a toss, if your grinder is not the best, see, there are a lot of new technologies now. You don't have to really rely on the human interference of the grinder. The blades, in grinders, primarily used for fine or coarse to get the best, powder out. So for that, you have now electronic settings where you can actually decide the gap of your blades electronically. No more human interference, no more changing, no more thoughts, it was at number 2, I'll put it on number 2. No. Now, if we set it at 0.85, that's a digital, mapping of my blades. Whenever you do that particular coffee, you always set it back at 0.85. If I'm doing a medium to dark roast, I can go up to, little different. If I'm doing a cold brew, I can go for different. So no human interference. We're cutting down a lot of, wherever we can be inconsistent, we are cutting that down with technology. That's exactly a profiling machine does. That's exactly, as I said, you can lock it once you have the best profiling. So the next time you do the shot, you just follow your same profile what you have said. Same way in the grinder, no human this thing, just set it up, lock it. Whenever you put that coffee for your cold brew, for your pour over, for your espresso, go on that and just press the button. Automatically, it presets and gives you the coffee. Then we have alternate, one more thing, I just want to share. I had a great learning from one of the companies I was working with to understand the alternate brewing, grinders and the espresso grinders. And this company is one of the leaders in the world. And they said, we don't agree that the espresso grinder can do manual brewing and the manual brewing can do espresso. I also thought so. But I also used to, I have learned that. And I just said the one grinder can do multiple jobs. But this company says, no, if you want to do an espresso grind, our burrs should have a different formation of teeth altogether. And they showed me that. I visited the factory in Italy. And then they said, okay, now I will show you manual burrs. And the manual burrs, which are ideal for cold brews, except Turkish and espresso, whatever you want to do, there's a different kinds of, formation of the teeth, we call it, on the burrs, which gives them the most consistent brew. But if you're trying to do espresso with the same, you need extreme fine coffee. And for that, you need to get a nice consistent powder, you need to use a different kind of teeth formation on your burrs, which I agreed. When I saw the results, I agreed with them. So, a lot of these things now, when companies are also going more deep into it, they're learning more, they're putting their learnings out, to the customers, to the equipment guys. And we are also, life is all about learning. So this is what we are now also telling our customers that, probably you should use different grinder because India still doesn't see different grinders for espresso and manual. So manual brewing has to be in a different grinder altogether, and espresso probably actually should be on a different grinder altogether. If you're doing a different espresso blend, probably better take a second espresso grinder rather than doing it on a manual grinder. And then we talk about the alternate brewing gadgets to serve coffee and to merchandise. Now here we have a complete range. We have T-Max, we have AeroPress, we have pour-overs, we have different sizes of pour-overs. We have mocha pots. I don't like it personally because it burns my coffee up to a certain extent. I'm a espresso lover. But talking about my alternate brewings, I will still prefer a pour-over. Siphon is great coffee. Probably the most cleanest cup of coffee I get is from siphon. But you should really understand how to make a good cup of coffee in a siphon. That's something which is a little challenge. And then, these are a few best ways to, make a good alternate brewing. I think pour-over still leads because in pour-over, you have a certain amount of showmanship, like in siphon, where the guests can also see how their coffee is being brewed in front of them. So again, the basic principles are the same. What coffee you use, what grind size you put them in, what's your ratio, and what's your water temperature, what's your timing, 5 things. You have your scales now, which can be completely calibrated You monitor your pour over time between 2.5 minutes to 3 minutes, what you're doing. You see your blooming at 1:2 ratio. You decide whether for this coffee, I need to do 1:14 ratio, 1:15 ratio, 1:16, 1:13, all depending on, there's no science like SCA says 1:15. No, 1:15 ratio is not for all the coffees. It's not for all the roasts. No way. It has to vary. And who decides this? Our brewer, our producer decides. He is the key in giving the good cup of coffee. Like a chef decides how much salt I have to put, a barista decides what's my best combination of my temperature, my timing, my ratio, my grind size. He decides and he puts it in front. Coffee merchandising. Yeah, sorry.
Can we safely say that the brewing time basically depends upon the kind of course of coffee you're using on the way you're doing coffee? Absolutely, right?
Yeah. Yes.
All right. Okay, good.
And then we have the coffee merchandising, which is now really picking up. I mean, I can see some great international branded chains, selling a lot of coffee merchandising. So idea is, how can I take my good coffee home? I come to this cafe. I love this cafe. This coffee is fabulous. When I have to drink, or I would love to give this coffee to my friends because I love this coffee. Today in India, people take a lot of pride in saying, I love this coffee. And I see that. Last 7-8 years, I've seen, a lot of people like that used to talk about wine. Oh, I love this wine from this country or from this. Today, they talk the same thing about coffee. I love the coffee of this. So, what I see economically also, coffee has always been related to development. All the developed nations are heavy coffee drinkers today, be it Australia, be it Japan, be it take US, Europe, wherever you are moving, your economy starts moving up, drastically, you start becoming a developed nation, coffee is going to be the key driver. And coffee is very popular. So similar thing, we see it in India now. As we are going up, okay, of course, COVID has, has stopped it a little, but as things are progressing well in India in the last 10, 11, 15 years, coffee is, really, the volume and the education of coffee is really moving up. Just may I request you for the next slide, please? Yeah. Okay, this is something very interesting. So now the new era of coffee shops are driven by micro lots. Micro lots is when you do, so the estates will be working on a very small variety, but they're going to be using a very unique processing system to develop a certain flavor, to have a certain kind of end product from your coffee, which is very different from what a regular coffee is. Micro lot differentiates completely the coffee from the coffee being used at a mass level or by everyone. So if I ask Starbucks, for example, what do they put in your blend? They'll not tell me what's in the blend. So when I talk to Barista Coffee, they will not tell me what's in the blend. So every coffee shop does their blend, and along with that, they work on micro lots. These micro lots are only for a certain time. Unfortunately, micro lots can't last long. If it's a whole year, then it's not a micro because then there's so much of coffee out there. So it's always a very limited supply, and it keeps the customers also very happy. And they, it gives a good listening to the cafes also to announce that we have this coffee for a certain time, and this will be over. And now we're going to be introducing a different kind of a micro lot from which you can expect this profile, taste profile from this particular coffee. Single estate coffees are being preferred. Today, a lot of coffee shops, cafe owners or roasters are actually going and talking to single estate coffee owners, estates, and sourcing their coffee for the whole year from a single estate. This is what I'm saying, the estate owners have also worked a lot to develop themselves based on the international learning, what they're getting on how to process the coffees. Medium roast coffees are in demand for espresso as compared to the traditional medium dark and dark. So you see a biggest change which has happened is earlier in the era one, all cappuccinos used to be with a single shot, which we call it the Italian shot. And now all the new generation cafes are serving their cappuccinos with a double shot. Now the reason is it's a medium roast, you have a lesser body. So you want to put in more flavor with your milk, but you don't want to give them a very high body. So medium roast will give you a great flavor, but to compensate to have a good body, so coffee is not like a Horlicks or a very milky coffee. We trade that with the additional shots. We call it double ristretto being used now for a 8-ounce or a 7-ounce cappuccino cup. Earlier, it always used to be a single shot. It's still you go to Italy, which is the mecca of cappuccino. It's still always the single shot. One of the more interesting aspects of this trend is that none of the stakeholders held exactly held international certifications when they started. And most are driven by a passion for coffee. That's exactly what we look for. Certification is very easy, but certification is only for your CV, biodata, that we have done it. But have you really learned it? Are you really passionate? We don't know. So when we are doing the certification program, or when we're doing the roasting, this exercise when we install a roaster, we do a mandatory training on the roasters. idea is that you have bought a Mercedes, you have bought a car. How do you learn it? How do you drive it? Do you use the best of the features? If you have a roaster, how do you use your roaster to get the best, blend or the best roast out? So this training program, and in India, unfortunately, we don't have too many platforms to learn this. So, it has to be on the site with your roaster, with the coffee, what you're getting. So as you learn more, you experience more, you can always come back for questions, because in 3-4 days, we cannot make you the master. But you always keep coming back with your questions, and we keep helping you out. This is how the whole process. More coffee quality driven along with the pairing of great food. This is Vikas, I think I'd love you to contribute. Because, I have worked as F&B manager, but for me, F&B was always more coffee. I used to love doing a lot of food, but I still feel in India, our pairing of great food with coffee is missing. When I see 200 tickets of 200 people coming, or 100 tickets, the food is only 40%. How can we make sure that the food, if I'm doing 150 tickets in a day, how do I make sure that out of 150, at least 70% of my customers order food? And okay, I know in Amsterdam, you go to a coffee shop, it's always a muffin or a croissant. Croissants are very popular. In India, I don't see the best croissants coming out always. Some of the cafes do have a great croissant, but then you need a certain infrastructure which can, you don't need to microwave firstly, so you need to make sure it's crisp and soft from inside. It goes well with your coffee. It's a deadly combination. But in India, I think we can do a great pairing of food with the Indian food. And Indians like a touch of spice. So a good coffee, milk coffee especially, with a little bit of spice, it will do very well. So probably here you can throw in some thoughts, because you work, a lot of food gadgets, and you've been into food industry.
So we will definitely ask people, but all I can tell you is, it's all to do with the culture. Now, if you look at typically in Italy, their morning breakfast is just a cup of coffee and a croissant. However, in India, we've had several companies which came in and tried changing eating habits. They could not succeed. Some of the best brands like Cheetos and Kellogg's could not survive. So it's more got to do with the coffee culture. But I think it's coming up there. If you look at, there is one cafe which is coming to my mind. I keep talking to you about again and again. There's one cafe in Navi Mumbai. It's called Cafe 70. It has a lot of food and coffee along with it. And these guys sells quite a lot of fresh food along with coffee. So it's all about the offering. It's all about the location. It's all about the eating habits, probably. So here, the tendency has been, more money driven, in the sense like people open up cafes for commercial purposes. They want to run a great cafe, but they don't want to take the pain of cooking the great food. So as you said, coffee has to be paired with great food. If you start cooking in great food at a great location, this will go hand in hand and you'll have a very good success. And this will come around, especially when you have neighborhood cafes. So nice, decent pricing, great volumes, great food, great coffee will do a great success. There you go.
True. I agree with you. I just had a new cafe opening in Gurgaon before COVID, Cafe Museo. It's India's largest collection of cameras in a place. And the gentleman had opened a beautiful cafe there with a great food. It's just started and COVID came in between. I think these are the, combinations for future. And now I think a limited and a crisp menu designed for the market, what you cater to. For instance, India is so diverse, I still remember, if you go to those college days, everybody used to have a puff and a fan with a tea. If you remember, Nescafe coffee or tea and you have a fan. So if you're in India, puff is a very popular thing. Not just in India, all over the world, a good puff, a buttered puff or a good puff is very popular. Now this puff can be a combination of a very nice white sauce with, wine and mushroom. You can have some exotic combinations, mild spice combinations, but some good pairing has to be done with the coffee, which doesn't take the coffee part out and leaves it very heavy with food, but coffee should be retained. So I think a good poll would be, if we can ask everyone in this, what would you like to have a good short eat with your cappuccino, when you visit a cafe?
Well, I don't have that, but I have a poll which says, what's your favorite coffee drink? Let me launch that poll. Guys, if you can just respond to this poll which says, what's your favorite hot drink? Cappuccino, espresso, South Indian cafe? Wow, it's changing.
It's changing. It's going up and down.
Guys, keep responding. You still have 20 odd seconds. I thought espresso was the winner. However, I see cappuccino is still taking the cake.
I think cappuccino seems to be
Guys,
the favorite one.
please keep responding. There are still about 50% there to respond. And you still have about 20 seconds. Again, I've extended it for another 20 seconds. Some more polls, please. Yes. So here this is what the winner is clearly cappuccino.
We have another 10 years to go for espressos to take over.
We are more fond of milk instead of,
We
Great.
expect that.
Great.
Fine,
Perfect.
absolutely fine. Even my morning coffee is always a cappuccino. First cup. But I think another interesting poll, if you can plan, would be, what do you like to have with your cappuccino in food? That will be great learning for food also, in the cafes. What do you want to have?
I could send it, but currently I don't have it.
Okay, probably the next one.
Okay, so that's it. Let's go on.
And so just I've shown you some pictures of the alternate brewing down. So you see a hand grinder, you see these kettles which are very precise. You see even cold drippers. Cold drippers are where you can actually make a cold brew on your table. By the time you are sitting and doing your work on your laptop in your office, this gives you in 45 minutes to an hour, 20 minutes, the kind of cold brew what you want on your table for one cup. So, everything has become very handy with the alternate brewing equipments which are being offered, in India, all over the world. Can you go to the next slide, please? I just thought I'll put up a beverage menu. What could be a beverage menu lookalike, in today's time? When we have so much of competition, every cafe wants to have their own, they want to have, something what they can take pride of as saying, this is my product. This is what I have worked on. So all Italian coffees with an option of morning breakfast home blend, international coffee blended with good Indian. I'm again a big fan of international, blending some proportion of international coffee, at least 15 to 20% with the Indian coffee. I like blending, honestly. I know India has a 108% duty on international coffee. 80% I still love to be my Indian coffee, but 20% I love to put some international coffee to make it a little more round, to make it, complete. And it's not different because world over, guys, the soil is all different. The soil is all different. India has its own volcanic soil. You go to Southern America, Central America, different soil. You go to Africa, completely different soil. So why not a little component can be blended in?
That taste will be different.
Yes. And, then we have good naturals from single high grown estates. So this could be, I think also a good morning breakfast blend, which is a strong blend. And then we have an evening blend because customers who are having an evening cup of coffee, especially I go to Italy, we always have espresso in the evening, late evening, And then this coffee, I don't expect to be very strong. But morning breakfast coffee, I like to be a little strong. You should give a very nice body and should stay on my palate for next 20 minutes. That's what I expect. Alternate brews with single origins, micro lots, further classified into fermented, casked. Fermented, I'm sure, most of the guys from the coffee industry who are here will understand that fermented coffee is really getting very popular. You're using enzymes, you're using, bio, you're really trying to get more precise, crisp flavors with your fermentation. Now, this, of course, carbonic maturation is also a form of coffee, which is very similar, but it's done with the whole fruit, where we control, so oxygen and carbon dioxide are two things which you can really, Sorry. Yeah. So you can really, carbonic maturation, if you really serve, you'll see it's, this is last 3 years India started experiencing. And this year I'm seeing a lot of estate guys trying to work on carbon. But then again, if you're doing a carbon maturation coffee, it's a crime probably putting milk into your coffee. If you're doing a fermented coffee, it's a crime putting milk in your coffee. Cask coffee, you have this rum barrel, coffees, you have whiskey barrel coffees, aged coffees, lovely coffees, which can be served as a great, again, will all these coffees go best on espresso machine? If you don't have a profiling machine, probably not with a single boiler. But then best thing is, what I'll do is I would rather, run it on my, alternate brewing method. I'll serve it on a pour over, probably which will be much better, or on a siphon, French press, I like and don't like because I always lose a lot of temperature in a French press in that process. And honey pulp, you have black honey, you have red honey, you have yellow honey, you have so many classifications of coffees today. None of this coffee should go with milk, but these coffees can really be enjoyed just you like the way you do your wines, so there's so much of work happening at the state level. Now, to get this on the ground at the cafe, you have to learn your roasting processes, how to match your correct roasting process with this coffee. When India had always heard about Mansur Malabar earlier. Mansur Malabar was a pride. But I think today, in today's world, I'm sure I can see in India doing much better coffees than Mansur Malabar, and it only needs to be promoted well. India in next 10 years could be the ground for experimenting the best, micro lots, all which and can be shipped all over the world. Trust me. And best part is that our domestic consumption in India itself is really growing so well. So you can add a lot of value, which is eventually good in terms of economy for your growers and for everyone, in the country. Then we have organic fair trade, Rainforest Alliance, which can be promoted to give back the grower community, their due share, playing a role in eco-friendly and good practices at farm level. Cold brews and flavor cold brews is something which is very exciting. I think cold brews are really getting very popular. Only thing is we need the right gadgets to do it, because we can't, the volume on cold brew is very poor. Or nitro, if you talk about, the volumes don't come, and we don't expect India to suddenly have very high volumes in cold brews. It will take, probably a cafe will only sell 15 cold brews in a day or 20 cold brews in a day, not more than that. Nitrogen infused flavored coffees. Why I say flavored coffees is because in India still, because we see a lot of milk coffee drinkers, we think coffee is bitter. So we curb over bitter with sugar. So in nitrogen, where we don't put any milk, we say any flavor which can go, like cinnamon, hazelnut. There's some flavors which are doing very well with your coffee can be added with your nitrogen. Nitrogen infused teas. Some good teas which you can infuse with nitrogen are fantastic. I don't know how many you know about infused cascara. Nitrogen infused cold cascara can be amazing with flavors. Cascara is nothing but the pulp of the coffee which is dry. It's got a lot of bright acid. It's got a complete different taste profile, which you can really enjoy. So you can infuse it with nitro. The cafes have to really experiment. The cafes have to really see what best. And they're all, for me, this is all chillers. I call them chillers. If I'm really, especially in a moist weather, humid weather, hot weather, I would love to have a flavored coffee, nitrogen flavored coffee, tea, or cascara, especially. And I say always, a good cup of beverages which you can just finish off without taking a break. And these coffees are such, they're very light-bodied coffees, and you enjoy the flavors. Then you can have vegan coffees. India is also becoming very lactic intolerant, so you can have a lot of, coconut milk, almond milk, soya milk. So many things are coming in now, slowly. Range of ice blended, cream blended. I always classify the cold coffees in three. Ice blended, which are more like frappuccinos kind of thing, or Starbucks serves. Lot of ice, but into a sandy texture. So you can keep drinking, it keep melting in your mouth, and you don't get any ice chunks, coming to your mouth. Cream blended, of course, always very popular. Lots of ice cream blended in your milk. Every cafe serves it, and it's always very popular. And on the rocks coffee. On the rocks coffee, again, in India, is if you're just putting espresso with some honey or some natural, this thing with the, with espresso and a milk, it's called on the rocks. Lots of ice. Then we have hot and cold cascara beverages. We have smoothies, juices, shakes, citric ice beverages. And citric ice are, again, like a smoothie, but with a citric background. In Italy, this is very popular. In many European countries, very popular. India, we don't use a lot of machines. We try to do it in a blender. So we try to, we don't create a lot of, a nice big menu out of it. So I can do a lot of lychee citric, I can do so many flavors if I can get a neutral flavor out. So probably it's a time we can start looking into, these kind of beverages. Hot chocolates, a traditional hot chocolate, you drink and you eat the rest half. So it's a good hot chocolate should not be more than 150 ml, ideally 140 ml. And eating a good hot chocolate in the morning means you're not going to be fighting with anyone the whole day. That's experience, that's indulgence you have. Masala coffee, why not? Spice coffee. You have masala chai, you have a cut chai. Why not a masala coffee? Why not a cut coffee? Why not a spice coffee? India is blessed with spices. India is blessed with great coffee. You need to experiment. With milk also, if you want to experiment, something like a filter coffee, but you should think of doing something. I would still, since it's more about beverages also here, I see a lot of tea companies now selling coffees. A lot of tea companies mushrooming in last 15 years in India. And till date, our coffee shops don't serve a good masala chai. If I go with my dad to a coffee shop, he always takes a cappuccino, but he would prefer taking a tea. But he doesn't like a tea bag tea with the milk. It's not his kind of a tea. So if we can make a nice, because this is actually, if we can develop a nice, small, compact masala chai machine, which a cafe can put and can serve their guests a nice masala chai,
Absolutely.
That's a good one. If you have a group, 5 people want to have a coffee. One guy says, no, I don't want to have a coffee. I had enough coffee. I like to have tea. But masala chai or milk tea, you don't have option. So tea companies are doing good coffees. Our cafes needs to get back into doing some good masala chais and good combinations of tea. I see Gulkan tea, I see Gul tea. There's so many good teas with milk now being served at the tea companies. So I think when coffee shops should think of something more into tea. And then I think the best part, the day will come when our customers will design their own coffee. I'm a guy, I go and say, okay, I need a cold coffee. I don't put any ice cream. I need a light boiled milk coffee, put a hazelnut, put some extra ice, and put a dollop of cream. So I don't want to have a fixed menu. I let my customers decide what to create. I want to have a cappuccino with a double shot, put an Irish flavor. I tell them. So he just tips tick marks and gives it to me what is, and the barista makes a coffee for his taste. That's the dream when we will achieve that, where our baristas are knowledgeable, the customer tells him what he needs. And trust me, this customer will never go away. He's the customer with you for life because he's just tried his coffee, what he wanted, made by the barista in front of him. And now this is marked. So whenever he comes, he prefers that coffee.
I absolutely agree with you, Vikram. In fact, the cafes will only increase their sales figures if they introduce some good teas. Because I can tell you with my experience, don't laugh it out. When we get out to go and have coffee, I want to have coffee. I walk in. My wife always wants a tea. And as your dad,
okay, here you go.
As your dad, we don't get a good tea. So we don't end up going to a cafe, or I pick up a takeaway. So if two of us sit together and kids come in, your APC is only going to go up from $80 or $200 to 600 or 800 or 900. So that really helps, obviously. So you said it all. You said it a very great point. Here comes your favorite, sir.
Thanks. Yeah, that's the coffee wheel, which I like. This is, you can see what all you can get from or expect from a coffee. Now, there are some tastes we don't want. If you see down, we have phenolic. We don't want phenolic coffee. But if you see this whole chart, you can get ginger. You can get, maltiness in your coffee. You see the left side, you have clove, you have cinnamon, you have chocolate, dark chocolate, maple, caramelized, honey, almond, nuttiness in your coffee. Fruitiness, nuttiness. Now, again, what kind of coffee you want to serve. If I'm having a cappuccino, of course, I would prefer chocolate, I would prefer caramel, I would prefer honey, I'll put nuttiness in my coffee, I will prefer spice in my coffee. A lot to do with your roast also, and a lot to do with the selection of coffee, your blending or your single. And if I'm talking about alternate brewing, I'm talking about naturals in form of espresso, the right side of the curve is very, very important. So everyone today is looking for citric, not citric, I would say, acidic, bright acidity. Now that's not lemon actually, it is fruitiness. I'm looking into my berry part. In berry also I can be more precise. I can't just say berry. I can look for a gooseberry finish. I can look for a nice blueberry coffee, and it's happening. The other day I was drinking a coffee which had a very, very mild mango bits into it. It was very nice to have a nice, So what I'm saying is you can do so much on your coffee, and the right side, it's very difficult to get with the milk. The left side ones are very easy to pick up with the milk. So you have to differentiate what coffees have to go with the milk, what coffees should not be going at all with the milk. And this you should recommend to your customers. If I say I need a very strong berry note and will come with the milk, I don't think I'm actually guiding my customer right. I'm confusing him. So especially at the stage what we are in India, I think it's very important for us also to differentiate and then, advise or, we have to advise our guests, what to drink, what not. I think it's a very in-depth thing, guys. It's not immediate. It takes its own due time for you to, get deep into it if you're into the roasting business. We talk about I always talk about economics whenever I go in Kapi Shastra. I always finish off with economics. End of the day, I put my heart and soul in this coffee business. But end of the day, what I want to achieve? Do I want to only run this cafe all my life? No, probably I want to expand. I dream, I wish to be something like Starbucks. If you read about Howard Schultz, how he started, how passionate the guy is, and how he started, how he bought the Starbucks, which is not the best, profit-making company. It's all written in his book, how he was employed, he bought the company out, and today it's history what he's done, with the brand. So everyone dreams to be owning a chain of cafes, the best cafes, So economics plays a very important role. Now, I've just given you a role. I'm sure there'll be a lot of questions coming into it. We can always answer these questions. But I'm not a very optimist guy. I'm a very pessimist guy. I always take figures which are, on a lower side. I expect my interiors to be 57 lakhs. I don't think I will ever make a cafe for 1,200 square feet, which is more than 57 lakhs. I take my investment of interiors at 3,500 rupees per square feet, 3,000 rupees per square feet. I take an investment on my coffee machine. So coffee machine, grinder, and blender, I always call as the heart of my coffee. Because what is a cafe? A cafe is a coffee shop. So what is your prime product? Is your coffee. So I need a good machine, a consistent machine, a machine which is more flexible for me to give a good cup of coffee, and of course, a good service program. Because if I'm buying an asset, I buy a car, and this car guy is not there to serve me after 2 years, my car is gone. So I need a, machine which can be serviced in India all over. And then I need a good grinder, I need a good blender. So I put 7 lakhs in there. And I put other equipments for kitchen for about 8 lakhs. Can I go back, please? Sorry, because the same slide.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Is that okay? Is this slide all
no,
right?
The last one.
This one.
Yeah, sorry. I talk about my total investment on coffee roaster for 7 lakhs. This is a half kg roaster. I don't need actually at this stage, if I'm running a 1,000 square feet cafe, till the time I really want to supply to every other cafe in the city, I would like to go for a 5 kg. But I'm looking for my own coffee cafe, to roast coffee fresh, and also probably merchandise a little on Amazon or a little on for my guests. A half kg is good enough for me. I don't need more than that. And because, I would like to run the cafe roaster more and more. I would rather announce in my cafe, I will run my roaster for 2 hours in the morning and 2 hours in the evening. Come and have a coffee or, buy the merchandise and get a certain discount. I want them to see what is roasting, get used, and ask me questions about what I'm doing. This is very important. So total investment, if I put 57 lakhs, all on a higher side, I only take 140 cappuccinos or lattes or any hot coffee, 140 rupees and 120 cups a day. Now, I'm sure people who are running coffee business in a 1,200 square feet cafe, 1,000 square feet cafe, if you're doing 120 coffees, cappuccinos, or any hot coffee, it's not much. Then you're talking about 20 alternate brews, 20 maximum 20. I'm talking about 3 kgs of coffee powder merchandise in a 250 gram packet, in a 500 gram packet. This takes a little time, but people start at seeing your roastery. They start coming. There's a lot of aroma of coffee, which is very, very inviting. Bakery and coffee aroma is always very inviting anywhere you go. So, of course, they will love to take this experience back home. Cold coffees, which are always a seller, but not, today it's very high, but I feel eventually for good cafes, third wave coffees, cold coffee would probably come down and hot will always move up. So cold coffee, 60 cold coffees a day. This is all I've taken, 200 cups of coffee. Out of that, 140 hot and 60 cold. If you can manage this with a pricing of 140 as a cappuccino, 120 for alternate brewing, which also includes your micro lots and your single origins, and your cold coffees for 150 bucks, which is like indulgence. I do Snicker shakes, it's all cold coffee shakes, everything included, 60 cups, what you do in a day. 200 beverages and only 60 food. So I anticipate only 30% of my customers will buy food. And I've kept my food as a finger food, 140 bucks. If I'm not talking about a fast service, is 140. That can of course go to 200 to 50 rupees, right? Because correct me if I'm wrong on food part. So 140 is a very pessimist value I've taken, thinking 30% of people should enjoy food. 70% they will not order because probably I don't have the right mix. And I'm a cafe. I'm not a food place, So in that, my revenue, if I take total sales, is this. I've given you the breakup. Now, if you see my costing, which is very interesting, cost analysis of hot coffee down, because my cost comes from my analysis down. I take a good coffee in India at 300, 310 rupees. Now there's a blend that can come down to 270, it can be 260, depending on my green coffee and my negotiation with my state owner and what I buy the whole year. I take a 18% loss of coffee in that, and I take my packaging costs, a good packaging cost with the Wolf packing, everything all put together. I put 19 grams of coffee in my cup. 19 grams is a double shot. Most of the new generation roasters use a double shot today, so I've taken the same. So my cost of the cup in coffee, see, this is a very highly profitable business. This reason, you remember we were discussing why coffee shops multiply so quickly and not the restaurants. This is the reason. Because my beverage menu profitability is much, much higher than my food. In a food, I play between 30 to 40%. I have shrinkage. In coffee, I have zero shrinkage. And I have my beverage cost confined to 15 to 18%, not more than that. Maximum I pay is in my cold coffee because I put ice cream and all. In my hot, my espresso shot is 5 rupees, 6 rupees, 7 rupees. That's it. And how much I pay for espresso is 100 bucks. So my profitability also reflects that. Only thing what we have to achieve is number. In Australia, between 7 to 11, I do 400 cakes of coffee. A good cafe in Australia does 400 cakes of coffee in the morning. In India, if we can achieve 200 cups in the whole day, we have achieved. If we have not achieved 200 cups, probably my location is not the best. So if I really see my total profit and my recovery, can we go to the next slide, please? Yeah. So I've taken my capital investment and I've taken my variable costs. Now in the variable costs, I've taken a payroll of one manager, whom I think should be 45,000 rupees, right? I've taken 9 team members who are my baristas and my heart and soul at 20,000 rupees. and my 2 housekeepers. All put together, my cost. In my food costs, I've taken 18% as my beverage. Cold coffee, I've taken about 20%, and food, I've taken flat 40% on a higher side. Always, I take. You can control. You can even bring it to 30%, but I've taken high 40%. My beverage costs, my rentals, I've taken 180,000 rupees, which is a decent neighborhood cafe or a good cafe, 1,000 square feet. Of course, if I'm hitting upon the best mall of the city, or I'm hitting upon Connaught Place or the best high street cafe, I'll not get 180,000. But my format is not for the best mall or the best location. Electricity, other miscellaneous, all put together, I still feel if you're doing a sale of 43,000 rupees a day, you can achieve your entire ROI of 57 lakhs investment in 14.5 months. If you have questions, we can always, but again, I see you need to drive at least 140 hot cups and 60 cold. 200 cups of coffee you should do in a day. Anything less than that will have an impact on your labor costs, because labor costs should be not more than 7 to 9% on an average. 7% is the best. But as we don't drive our end total turnover, and turnover is less, we end up paying, everything goes up. Our percentage of the rental, which should be 15%, jumps to 25, 30%. Our labor cost jumps to 15%. So what happens? My EBITDA falls down drastically. Our EBITDA should be close to 30, 35%. It falls down to 10, 12%. And then all my hard work of running a cafe goes, I don't enjoy it because I'm not making enough money out of my cafe. But if I really position it well, what I'm saying is you need to have the right offerings. So one roastery can make so much impact that you can have your own set of loyal customers and you can become a talk of the town today. In today's era, especially in these years, what India is in, any roastery cafe which opens becomes a talk of the town. Right? And that's what I'm saying. Eventually, all the specialty coffee shops in the next 10 years would be roastery cafes. This is the future, of our industry. So I think we are already 1:30, Vikas. So you gave me 1 hour.
Yeah, I would. That was a great presentation, by the way, Vikram. I mean, a great insight actually on the coffee business. We really appreciate it. And I'm actually throwing the floor for Q&A. I already have a few questions which I'd like to share. Let me start with a compliment, Vikram. You have huge compliments from Mr. Ram Vittal Rao for the great information you have shared with the entire world. He also wants to know what's the role of a water in making a good cup of coffee. So let's start with this really.
I think water is the most, 98% of coffee is water. Only 2% of coffee is its oils and its flavors. So if the 98% of the product is not good. In India, when we are using, well, actually, I have to thank sir. This is the best question what is asked. So I should have covered this in my presentation. Water in India is majorly is the RO water, reverse osmosis water, which we consider technically as a dead water, even for our bones, for our body, and for coffee. Now, coffee, if you're looking about for a bright acidity and a good coffee, RO water doesn't have anything to, there's no mineral content left in it to really give a distinctive taste profile on my coffee, especially I'm talking about black coffee. Water is always to do with my black coffee. Now, in Europe, we have companies who have worked and taken patents for a specific remineralization. So we have a research where we found calcium and magnesium are the 2 components of positive minerals in our coffee. Now, if we are using magnesium at 25% and we are using our calcium at 75%, there is a complete different profile of coffee coming out with that water. And if we use 75% magnesium and 25% calcium, there's a research from a company called BWT, right? And we really wanted to partner with them and bring them to India, because in India, what we need is a good water, remineralized water for our coffee. So the best thing what we thought with their study was, in Europe, what they're doing, they are trying to remineralize water before it gets into the coffee machine. So we have the RO, because in India, we use the water for ice cream machines, we use it for drinking, we use it for everything. So we said we're going to be remineralizing the water after RO, right, to give us the right water, especially the magnesium content, which is very, very important, because this really brings down, you have a certain amount of bitterness, which is astringency, which is coming. It's really, astringency comes down if you increase the level of magnesium in your water.
Vikram, I have a suggestion. Let's cut down our answers to not more than a minute. I know there's a lot to talk about, because we have a lot of questions.
Water is a very interesting subject. Trust me, water is a very interesting subject.
Let's do a separate session on that in that case. Somebody is asking if your espresso is tasting like an orange juice, where is the problem?
If your espresso is tasting like a
orange juice. I mean, if there's citricity in your espresso, where is the problem?
So there's no problem. The definition of espresso is that in espresso, we want a very nice balance. Probably the balance has gone missing. See, we try a lot of naturals and new coffees which are coming into our offices. We see if you brew it at 26, 28 seconds, it becomes extremely acidic, but when the finish becomes very short. We don't want a coffee with a short finish. We want a coffee with a long finish, always. That's what a specialty coffee has to be. So when you are getting a very highly fruity citric coffee, which is probably it's not very orange, it's very highly acidic, we need to trade in more body. To trade in more body, either we have to put more grammage of coffee or we have to increase the shot of the, timing of the shot. That's right, for my naturals, I love going up to 36, 38 seconds for my naturals, for some naturals, to enjoy the cup. If I do 30 seconds, for me it's not good, but the Bible says 30 seconds.
There's a gentleman who's into popcorn business. He says, is coffee and gourmet popcorn a great idea?
Yes, always. If you go to a cinema, you always pick up a coffee and popcorn, So it's a great combination.
In fact, there is another gentleman called Rajat Chopra who heads the F&B of Carnival Cinema. He says we could throw some light from a coffee perspective for cinema business. If you can give in a 1-minute brief to him, how would you put it?
See, I think cinemas, the biggest challenge is you're serving cappuccinos from a fully automatic machine, because of the speed. I think Carnival is one of the few cinemas with just semi-automatic machines. So speed of the barista is very critical. And the grinder component. See, there are two kinds of grinders. You're using a semi-automatic and a fully automatic grinder. In automatic grinder, you have a very consistent dosing always. So it's not the barista deciding the dosing, the grinder decides the dosing. And in cinema, always people make the coffee and they tend to take it back into their, then open it, put the sugar, add it. So temperature and the body of the coffee. So you have to blend your speed with your, temperature and body are very, very important when you talk about a cinema. I feel in cinemas, if you can try with a nice black coffee with cream and milk on, top, based on, this thing, this could be a great coffee to be offered to the cinema goers who wants to pick up a quick coffee and sit inside. Cappuccino takes time. Always a good cappuccino takes 2 cappuccinos will take a minute. You cannot make it faster. Then if you're doing it super fast, you're compromising on the quality, which is we call the specialty thing. You always want to be compromising. So either you have the best technology in the tools, or you can, always have a nice black coffee with cream on top or milk on top. And milk also should not be the regular milk. It has to be the high fat, like Delecta used to have that milk, something like that.
Okay. There is another gentleman, he's saying, are we going to see more micro roaster cafes like micro breweries in the future? The answer is, of course, yes.
That's the future.
Okay, there's a gentleman from Mysore, Nakul. He says, what is the best mode of marketing for cafes today? What channel? And how to stay competitive beyond the taste and quality?
Cafes generally, because, it's always word to mouth. All good cafes are driven by word to mouth. Social media is playing a great role. I remember initially when the cafe culture started, a lot of coffee shops used to do buy one, get one. These were all very temporary. If you are taking, the guy who started Ely Cafe, Mr. Ely, he has his one words. If you see your customer going back smiling after having a coffee from your cafe, he's a satisfied customer is coming back. So it's for a good cafe, it's always a word to mouth. If you are having a chain, then it's a different kind of a marketing. But so a neighborhood cafe, you just have to make sure your guests don't leave you, because there's a lot of silent customers. I'm a silent customer. I do a cafe, I don't like it. Probably I'll not go and complain, but I'll not come back again. So it has to be taken care of. Biggest problem in India today in cafes is the 3 baristas or the 2 baristas who are working in a shift. They have to be consistent. You get a great cup of coffee with one barista, the second barista is not offering the same quality of coffee. And then that's a chance where you lose your customers. So technology and barista training has to play a role.
So Vikram, that's a norm. 80% of the people who have a complaint will never come back to your brand. That's a very standard research worldwide. So you have to be the best. Somebody just commented saying that it took long for Cadbury to remove the milk from chocolate. We will also do it at some point in time. Then there is somebody commenting on your beverage menu. Very, very interesting. In fact, Mr. Ramital Rao only. What else is there? Alkaline water, Sanjay, interior cost of doing, okay, he says very high, but that's something we can discuss about. Okay, any more questions? People, if you have any more questions, just type it out or raise your hands. We will take it up. How can we learn roastery? Any specific program for the same? So you get in touch with us, write us on the mail you're seeing, and we'll put you through to the right person. Mr. Vikram, and then you can take it up with them directly.
We have 4 labs: Delhi, Bombay, Bangalore, Hyderabad. Unfortunately, we only have roasters in 2 of our labs, Delhi and Bangalore. We do programs on roasting, and I think the most effective program that we do is with the customer when he's putting a roaster. We have a trainer going there, and she spends 4 days with our customer, just hands-on training for 8 hours in a day. Burning coffee also happens that time because it's running at 212 degrees. So that's the best time when you understand what is a light roast, how to cup the light roast. It's called a cinnamon roast. What is the profile? And up to dark, there's 7, 8 different roasts what we make them try. This gives them a very good experience on what's the taste profile, what's the balance of a coffee. And when they pick up a certain coffee from the state, we talk about different coffees, then it's very easy for them to really understand whether we have to make medium roast, light to medium to dark or dark.
So we have Mr. Bhushan saying, will India move to third wave of specialty coffee, or will it continue to be with milk-based coffees?
It's going to be strong milk-based coffee for the next many years. I would say this culture, as I said, from tea to green tea took us 50 years. So coffee also from, milk coffee to Americano first, or a brewed coffee, and then to the espresso will take its own sweet time. But I think the specialty drive today is being driven by the individual cafes. The chains have to start. Now I know Starbucks has started a Starbucks Reserve store. They have done 5, 6 stores all the world. The motto of doing a Starbucks Reserve store is to bring in specialty component to their cafes. That's what a great initiative they've done. So if you see, the largest cafe chain also wants to be in that category of specialty with their Reserve stores. So the chains also have to start thinking of doing some Reserve stores or something where they can also add the component and tell their customers that we are also into that category. Today, it's completely driven by standalones, who are doing a great job.
There is a gentleman, Amitabh, saying, please share your opinion on decaffeinated coffee.
It has been in India since 1999. I was F&B manager, so we used to throw a lot of decaf coffee after 6 months because of certain life, because it's roasted coffee. In India, we always say decaf coffee has never become very popular. It's only the hotels, 5-star hotels, it's popular because people don't like caffeine, they don't like coffee. But point is, if you don't like caffeine, probably we should not be having coffee. That's a very honest thing, because decaf, for me, I like caffeine. A body needs caffeine. And there's a very positive study. If you have a good cup of coffee, the caffeine content in your body demands for the same coffee in next 22 hours. Not even 24 hours. In 22 hours, you start craving for a good cup of coffee. Again. That's caffeine. That's caffeine.
There is Nakul again asking a question saying that I've had another concern. People asking for a very, very hot cappuccino. We end up breaking up the beverage. What's the way out?
That's the way, because in India, what we do is coffee is a lifestyle. It's not a beverage in our blood. The day we start getting up at 7 in the morning and start queuing up in front of a coffee shop is going to be the day when we'll not start drinking very hot coffees. Today, we order the coffee. It comes to our table. I put sugar sachet. I stir it for 6 times. I take my cup. I'm talking and I'm having a coffee. And by then, technically, I've already lost 6 degrees of my coffee, 7 degrees. And then I complain to the barista my coffee is cold. But it's not my barista's complaint. It's the way we are drinking the coffee. So in Italy, when you're ordering a coffee, you stand at the counter and have a coffee. You don't even sit. You only sit when you're ordering food. So this milk problem will always be there, because from last many generations, we've been to the habit of drinking chai in the morning, which is just coming out from the gas, which is boiled, burnt, and filter coffee in South India, which is again super hot. So and cappuccino comes with a foam. There are 6 spoons of foam on top. A lot of people think this foam is supposed to be very hot, but foam is not supposed to be very hot. You have to eat the foam and drink your coffee. It's a breakfast coffee. So this complaint will be there till the time. And you keep educating, but you can't fight with the customer, because then silent customers, they don't come back. They go to other cafe asking for more hot coffee. So
Nakula,
keep giving them.
I will suggest you to put a huge poster right next to your counter saying ways to drink a great coffee. That will really help you a lot.
Yeah, that's the education which you need to provide.
And there is a very interesting question coming up by this gentleman called Amitabh saying, he says, is it a good idea to have an Indian beverage menu like aam panna, lassi, chaach in an Italian espresso cafe shop? I would say an Italian espresso cafe, but yes, for a normal cafe, you can definitely put it.
It's India. We can put a nice aam panna with a soda or a tonic water. We can play around. There's so much of you can playing around, with kokums, and, it's India. We have to use, we are using Indian coffee. So why not Indian beverages in cold formats? And we're using so much of ice creams and all of it in Indian coffees. Indians are very diabetic, but they still love to have ice creams and, creams and everything in their coffee. So these aam pannas and all are great products. Only thing is you have to make them more presentable. At the end of the day, you have to charge a certain value, because you have to charge a value to customers. They should not be feel cheated that they're paying high amount for a very basic product. So add that value into the product.
There's a gentleman who's saying, why does workplace coffee taste different from cafes? I'm sure we all know the answer. You know the answer.
Yeah, the workplace are always fully automatic. No great brand in the world on coffee has been created with a fully automatic machine. Fully automatic machine is a computer-driven machine, only a convenience-based coffee, not a third wave coffee. Third wave coffee is always going to be driven by the baristas. You know, we are the baristas. We have to play a role in that. It's the hands that makes the magic.
I think that's the answer to the question wherein like people ask what is the difference between automatic and a semi-automatic.
Convenience-based coffee.
Yeah, it's a convenience-based.
Yeah. Then there is Bhupesh Kumar says, how tough is it to find a skilled manpower in smaller cities?
You have to train them. If you have to, it's not easily available. You can go and poach it, but then they'll also, some other cafe will come and poach your guy also tomorrow. Best thing is train them at your place. When you train them with your recipes, with your passion. He understands on your machine. So you have to see, this is the only job which doesn't need any qualification. You don't need to be even a 12th pass. Trust me, we made in a resorts in Bandhavgarh, a 4 small resort, 15 rooms. You know, one of my trainers went and did a training there for 4 coffee machines installed. We had the tribal guys coming for 2 days, and we trained them for 2 days, 8 plus 8, 16 hours training. And these tribal guys really picked up the coffee so well, and they were making latte arts in the second day. So no qualification required, just a passion. If the guy is not passionate, by half a day seeing his work, you can understand he's not going to make the best coffee. He's not pouring his heart into it. You have to pour your heart into your coffee.
Hitu Mohani, do you want to type your question and give it to us? We can answer that. In the meantime, Nakul gives you compliments. He says, my biggest takeaway is to introduce tea in my cafe. I will certainly look into it. Thank you, Vikram. Mr. Ram Vittal Rao, any inputs on Coffee Academy training?
We tried doing it. What we realized was that most of the baristas, to do a good academic training, you need to have a great trainer. And a good trainer today costs nothing less than 75,000 rupees. Unfortunately, in India, we tried, but the baristas don't have a bandwidth. So the marketing expenses is low. So we do it through Coffee Board of India currently. Coffee Board of India has a great program called Kapi Shastra. It's a highly subsidized program. For 1 week, we can get enrolled there. And in 5 days, we take them through an entire tour of coffees, you know, the plantations, the roasting, the grinding, forms of brewing. I take the class on the Italian brewing for a day there. So this is the best. In private sector only, you know, we have all the resources, we have the knowledge, we have everything. But when we go and ask people to pay a small fee, the numbers are very, very less, you know, very, very. Or the entrepreneurs who are running the cafes should take this initiative and, you know, send them for training. Many schools have come up, actually, not just our school, 2, 3 more schools, you know, came up, but they all winded up. Hotel management student, you know, colleges tried doing it. I think that's a very good idea. If hotel management students can start, you know, the colleges can start training. We do it. Actually, we do it free for a lot of our customers. They can come and enroll into our program for 2 days and get free training. We do that. We're trying it, but, you know, the customers have to pay. You know, they have to pay a little small fee for that. That's very important.
Trust and givers gain philosophy. You will gain. There is a gentleman who says, oh, in fact, Rajat, saying absolutely right, Vikram, our housekeeping guys at the cinemas makes good coffee at times. So it's all about training.
Exactly. It's all about training and love.
Absolutely. Guys, we still have 4 minutes before we close down. We will appreciate if you have any questions, just type it down. We will take it up with you. Otherwise, we'll call it quits. And of course, thank you very much, every one of you, for joining in this morning and being there and giving us your time and listening to Vikram, us. Thank you again. Waiting for still questions. If you have any, let me know. We still have 1 or 2 minutes. We can take your questions. Vikram, any thought of yours on anything? There is a gentleman that says...
some highlights on food pairing with coffee.
Yeah.
Sorry, food pairing with coffee?
Satyendra Ganju saying, if you can throw some highlights on food pairing with coffee, what would you recommend? I mean, what kind of...
With my experience, I feel in India, the hot sandwiches, this is my experience. I used to be the food beverage manager for a cafe. So I used to see what moves out. So by 3 o'clock, all my puffs will be finished, generally most of the cafes. All the puffs. Now, in puffs are not the aloo puffs. The puffs are with chili paneer filling, exotic puffs, fillings we used to put them. And the cheese and tomato sandwiches, the hot grilled. So this is the difference. In Europe, bistros serve cold sandwiches with hams and lettuce and cheese. In India, you need to grill them mandatory because in India, the hot sandwiches are more popular.
Right.
So, you need to grill them, you do something, but you have to make them hot. So sandwiches are the best combinations. But apart from that, a good croissant, again, when I travel Europe, my morning breakfast is always a croissant and coffee. So if you have a nice croissant, of course, little affordable. Good croissant cannot be very affordable, I know, in India. But if you have a nice, so you have to pair it. You have to really think about not making it very expensive, because the parity of food price and coffee price needs to be maintained. Because it's a cafe, it's not a very fine dining restaurant. But the pairing, I think technology also has to play a role. I've seen some nice micro, ovens, which can do not the microwave ovens, but the ovens, which can give a very nice crisp finish to a lot of food, which doesn't happen in microwaves.
Nakul has another question. He says, do you think cheese and coffee is a good combination, or pizza and coffee? Of course, yes. Pizza and coffee goes very, very well.
Pizza and coffee goes very well, yes.
I'm sure cheese and coffee also, Vikram. What do you think?
You can try with black coffee, especially with this naturals, with this micro lots, what you're talking about. Cheese will do very well. Not with the milk coffee, though, but definitely with we need to play with this, we call them the alternate brewing. In that, we talk about the specialty coffees a lot. With them, yes. Try to take a medium body coffee, not a very heavy body coffee with cheese.
Correct.
One last question, probably from Mr. Johnson. He says, what's the call on opening cafes with investors? Can we make profits up there?
If your investor is a passionate guy and he doesn't tricks you for a very immediate profit, this is not the business to give you immediate profits, to be very honest. If you have to be sustaining and in the long term, they have to be patient. The investors have to be patient.
All right. Oh, wow. There are more questions coming. Ajit Mathur, are there any regulations on blending chicory with coffee? Why is it actually needed?
It is a balance. There's 49% is the max amount, but the thing is, you cannot measure it. There's nothing why you can measure it. If you can put 53%, nobody can. This family for the filter coffee, because in due years, in South India, the 4 states where we have the maximum consumption of filter coffee, chicory has been an integral part. Chicory gives you more volume. It brings in. So, people have been trading coffee with chicory in filter coffee segment. Good part, in our culture, in our cafe culture, there's no role of chicory. You can't use it in espresso or in alternate brewing. It has to be pure in the purest form of coffee.
Mr. Dayal Advani, thank you very much for being on the session today. We will certainly look at doing demos also on the session. We are trying to figure out that. I think we are trying to work out some demos, but we're trying to work out with Zoom how we can do it, because they're constantly updating their software. So they're currently an issue, but we are working on this. Thank you very much for your inputs. Mr. Sachin says, can fruit pulp plus coffee concept work?
Yes, orange, mandarin. It's always the best combination to go with. Somebody said, orange-based espresso. Orange, mandarin has been my favorite. Talk about coffee. Lychee. There are a lot of neutral fruits which you can play around. See, you cannot do too many intense, fruits which can go with your coffee. No. Strawberry, for instance. So you have to be very careful when you're playing with that. Berries. Some of the berries are very easy. So you have to experiment. Fruits do go well with black coffees, provided don't make it very intense. You let your coffee dominate. Coffee has to dominate.
This last question, I think, from Mr. Rajesh.
He's actually saying that he's suggesting that combi oven should be a part of cafes these days.
That's what I'm been, saying that instead of micro, put in a little better technology so you can have a better finish of your food. And Indians love their food with coffee.
You have the real taste and the real authenticity of the food, in fact.
Absolutely. So thank you very much, guys, once again for being there with us and listening to Vikram and us. It was really a pleasure and answering your questions. We look forward to seeing you again at one of our next episodes. We will keep you posted shortly. And thank you again. We really enjoyed having you as our audience. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, Vikas.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, everyone, joining. Yeah. Thank you. Bye.